I really do think about this often because it's so easy to try and compare yourself to what other people are doing. But if you don't have the means, and I don't just mean you don't have like the open-ended hours in a week to work on an illustration, but you don't necessarily have the setup, you don't maybe have the right scanner, you don't, there's so many stumbling blocks that can stop you from drawing like someone that you aspire to be, but you shouldn't necessarily aspire to be that person. You should aspire to be the best you. It's really about your unique point of view, and that is what gives your art value. So you lean into it and you be more you. My approach to coloring is fairly quick, honestly. I try and do the first pass as quick as possible. Once you've got the basic color palette down, I try and I only use standard hard round brush with opacity turned on, and just dive through the page and the panels as quick as possible and just try and slap down the colors just to get the feelings right, and then go back in with a more textured watercolory brush and go back in again and do another pass, then go back in again and paint the edges, then go back in again and paint some details in. And I don't want it to look perfect because I want it to look like it's made by a person. I want it to have that slightly tangible feel. I also opt for a recycled paper stock for the final product because I think it leaves the artwork feeling a little bit more relatable, because there's not that sheen on it. Like, it's not perfect. It kind of, it leaves it looking more more human. These are the tools that I used for the entirety of book one, not including Photoshop and the PC next to me. Jelly Roll 08, white pen. I used whiteout, a good eraser, a long point sharpener, FW black ink. I used a Raphael Kolinsky brush for it as well. And it's a number 5, so it's quite a fat head on it. So basically, when you dip it into the ink, it holds a bit more ink, but it also retains more of a fine point. When I've used thinner or smaller brushes in the past, you just end up re-dipping constantly, and it can be a nightmare to work with. Whereas you can get quite a nice long fluid line with a Kolinsky number 5. Like, it's quite good. I've got 6 of them. Yeah, it's quite expensive, honestly, relying on traditional brushes for that. It was fun, but I've moved away from it. I also used a Pilot Kokuno fountain pen for a lot of the shading. I used a Micron fineliner for a fair bit of it as well, and a blue Coloraze pencil. So the blue Coloraze pencils, they don't smudge at all, and I think they're primarily used by animators, but I also found it really useful when I was navigating this whole how do I work thing. And pencil extenders are amazing because I've got massive hands, and it can be really hard to hold a pencil once you're only halfway down it. It just doesn't, like, it doesn't fit in between my fingers, and it's such a waste of a pencil. So those pencil extenders are amazing, and they're very cheap. So that was how I did book one. And then book two is slightly different in that I used a mechanical pencil. So I still blue lined everything, but then I drew everything in pencil on top. Part of the reason for this was because working with the publisher, the blue line, when I was just drawing everything in blue line, I would have to increase the contrast and turn it to grayscale when I was sharing my drawings with them. So drawing it in mechanical pencil over the top of the blue line really helped with that, and it helped me avoid certain weaknesses that I noticed in my own artwork in the first book. Yeah, so I use Pilot G-Tech pens because they're a bit more consistent with the lines than the fountain pen. The fountain pen, I got very frustrated with. It just drove me a bit crazy. So instead, I now use these Pilot G-Tech pens. They're just really good. They're very fine, and they've been really good even for sketching and things like that. And I have a couple of Pentel brush pens. I have 2 because one, the ink flows out incredibly heavily, so I use it for doing spot blacks or for just heavier line work, and the other one is still working quite nicely at the moment. I also made these 2 assets to try and make my life easier. So the thing on the left is just a single page layout. So I put a grid on it. So I've got my bleed and my my grid lines broken into thirds, marked off the center of the page, pretty much everything I would need to lay out a page with or without a ruler, honestly. And the thing on the right is just thumbnails. So these things, I would print tons of these off and just dive into working, and it really helps because drawing the outlines on a page, it takes long enough as it is.